So we know characters who fight for justice. They are superheroes and so on. Police, firefighters, doctors and nurses, everyone that helps to save a life. So when crime isn't that well dealt with, you got those people who want to take the revenge, and so enforcing it, they are called vigilante. But we're not talking about Batman vigilante, no, we're talking about the time for the Lone Ranger. Those vigilantes, although some can be brutal than Batman or Lone Ranger who has a no-kill rule sort of thing. These are the vigilantes from the daily life section in Story of America cards. A vigilante is a person who practices and partakes in vigilantism, or undertakes reproductive justice without legal authority or commission. Vigilantism means an act of enforcing the law and investigating and punishing offenders and crimes without legal authority. The word vigilante comes from the Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese term vigilante, which means sentinel or watcher, and it also is the Spanish equivalent meaning private security agents. From time to time on the American frontier, and sometimes even in more established communities, self-appointed law enforcement groups called vigilantes appear. Their aim was to dispense justice when the appointed law officers in courts were, in their opinion, unable or unwilling to do so. The most famous vigilante activity occurred in San Francisco, California during the gold rush days of the 1850s. In 1851, the new city's government was unable to deal with gangs of outlaws known as the Hounds, who were suspected of starting a series of great fires that destroyed parts of the city. A group of vigilantes under the leadership of Sam Brandon caught and executed a known criminal and leader of the gangs, John Jenkins. Another incident of vigilante activity took place in 1864 near the frontier mining town of Virginia City, Montana. A man by the name of Henry Plummer had been elected sheriff of the town recently, and having official knowledge of gold shipment schedules, he practiced being a sheriff by day and leader of a gang of stage robbers by night. A group of vigilantes of local citizens were hastily organized and eventually hunted down Plummer and his gang. Frontier justice was swift and unusually fatal. One town was renamed Hangtown after a vigilante episode. But such practices were not restricted to the frontier. In 1858, some vigilante groups formed in New Orleans, Louisiana, in an effort to guarantee honest elections. They took part of the city's French Quarter and succeeded in bringing change in the city's admissions. In 1890, another vigilante group there took matters into their own hands when the mafia agents murdered the chief of police, but they were let off by the courts. The vigilantes stormed the jail where the murderers were being held and shot them to death. For the most part, American vigilantes groups were composed of responsible citizens who simply wanted to see justice done. Once the government proved their ability and willingness to assume the law enforcement role, they quickly disbanded. On occasion, however, groups of so-called vigilantes acted irresponsibly either out of vengeance or personal motives. Even for the well-intentioned, taking the law into their own hands could lead to mistakes. The truth was witnessed by a famous grave marker at Boot Hill Cemetery in Tombstone, Arizona, which leads lynched by mistake. Formally defined vigilantism rose in America during Spanish rule. After the founding of the United States, a citizen's arrest became known as a procedure based in common law and protected by the United States Constitution, where a citizen arrests a person whom they have seen or suspect of doing something wrong. The exact circumstances under which this type of arrest, also known as a detention, can be made varies widely from state to state. Throughout the years, a lot of vigilantism occurred, and still to this day, and even outside the U.S., such as these. In the 1920s, the Big Sword Society of China protected life and property in the state of anarchy. Lynching was one of the most common forms of vigilantism in the United States during the 20th century. It was practiced during the early years of the civil rights movement, extending throughout the late 1960s. After World War II, many aligned Nazi contributors were beaten up or killed for the activities by vigilantes. And since the May 9th, 2016, Philippine elections and the start of Rodrigo Duterte's term as the president of the Philippines, numerous suspects, particularly drug users and pushers, were killed by various unknown hitmen labeled as a summary execution during his war on drugs. Duterte has been accused of being linked to the Davao Death Squad, a vigilante group active since the mid-1990s in Davao City, where Duterte had previously served as mayor. And that is the Vigilantes. I hope you enjoyed this history and fear Batman still. Anyway, I'm signing off today, and so, see ya.